Alright, so welcome to Eimverk Distillery. My name is Egill Thorkelsson, and I am the master distiller here, as well as the one of the founders and owners of the distillery.
Great.
This is a family-run distillery. It's family founded in 2009, and we've been slowly and steadily growing since then.
Yeah.
So our main product is Floki Whisky. Floki Whisky is our whiskey brand.
I saw all the bottles at the airport at Travel Retail just a moment ago.
Yeah.
Well done, well done.
So Floki is actually the name of the guy that first intentionally went and settled and sailed Iceland. So he, back in the heydays when they were discovering Iceland, he was supposedly the one that found Iceland and gave Iceland his name. So we take Floki's name for our whiskey. He is a Nordic explorer, finding new untraveled roads and taking risks and chances, but ultimately discovering and coming back home towards what was to become his home. So I'm going to walk you through the distillery in a bit. We're going to talk a little bit about our process, about what we're doing. But on the whole, what we focus on is making 100% Icelandic whiskey, and for that we use barley that we grow ourselves in our family farm.
About 90 minutes southeast of here?
Yeah, around that. Yeah.
Yep.
It's on the south side of Iceland,
Yep.
so it's relatively close by. And we've been growing barley there for quite a while now. But we also collaborate with other farmers around Iceland. So we have a very close-knit neighborhood of farmers and industry experts here in Iceland.
Great.
Okay, let me take you through the distillery. So this is the barley we use. This is 100% Icelandic barley. And the Icelandic barley is a strain that is selected to survive the short, intense summers we get here.
Yes.
So it's a hardy strain. It's not the most highest yielding strain available, but it's actually quite close to the type of barley that we're using 200-300 years ago when we were starting making whiskey in Scotland.
Cool.
Which is interesting because the climate here in Iceland today is pretty similar to what it was in Scotland 200-300 years ago. Now most Scottish whiskies are using more high yielding strains, but some of them are actually going back to this basic of the lower yielding barley because they find it gives more flavor. But we used Icelandic barley, so almost by accident we're doing actually the same thing that they're going back to the Scotland.
I think the university helped you develop it. Wasn't something along those lines with the finding that Icelandic barley, or did I misinterpret something?
Not quite. The barley strains we've been using is Kría, for example. And this is a strain that is developed for Icelandic agriculture.
Right.
So it's not specifically designed and developed for us, but it's designed and developed by the agricultural and the University of Iceland as a good strain that survives the winds we get. Because one of the problems is, because we have such relatively low temperature summers, you need all the summer days to grow the barley. So sometimes you're harvesting in September, and in September you might be starting to get some storms.
Yes.
And if the barley is too top heavy, you're just gonna blow away all the barley. So the Kría is a two-row barley, so it's a little bit more hardy to survive that. But what we found with the strains of Icelandic barley we've been using, it gives more flavor. It gives more spice, gives more, more grassy undertones to our whiskey. Okay. So the basic process is pretty much, similar to how you would make whiskey. You mill up the barley, you mash it.
Is it a hammer mill or is it a roller mill?
It's a hammer mill.
Okay, very good.
Roller mill typically breaks from the barley because it's a hard strain and it's relatively hard. So a hammer mill is the choice for us.
Now, I live in Germany, and we have the discussion with German whiskey, single malt, with the grain or without the grain. Do you lautern? Do you separate the grain from the liquid, or do you distill on grain?
We distill with the grain.
See, that's what I thought. I wasn't 100% sure, because that's very different from Scotland, or Ireland for that matter.
Yeah, from what they're doing now.
Yes.
But it's actually more closely to what they were doing when they started.
Yes.
Because, you know, back in the days, it was just like, how do you make whiskey? You just have barley and water in a barrel. You don't have any way of sieving it or sorting it or straining it.
Yep.
And then just throw everything in and hope it doesn't burn.
Mm-hmm. All right. Very good.
So let's go over here. So the milk barley, we move it to our mash tank.
Yep.
This one's called Magnus.
Mm-hmm.
And here we do a mashing.
Right.
We do a we start at about 70 degrees Celsius and then we move down.
Oh.
Because we're using the geothermal heat of Iceland to preheat the water.
Yep.
So we're basically using hot water to heat up the cold water. So we start at a higher temperature and then we work our way down. We do about a 4-hour intense mashing here to get everything we can from the Icelandic barley. And then we transfer everything to our fermentation tanks.
Yep.
Grain in, and grain in fermentation.
Yep. Your water, is it very hard here or is it soft?
Sorry?
Is the water soft or hard here?
It's hard here.
Okay, so very good. Just like in Kentucky with a lot of limestone water, not like in Scotland again. Interesting. Scotland is always soft.
Hard or soft? I always forget. Which is what?
Okay, hard has a lot of mineral, and soft has very little mineral.
Soft.
Oh, see, I did not know. Excuse me. All right, my mistake. Excuse me.
It
So
does not have a lot of minerals.
Yes. All right.
That's the thing. I always get these two.
All right. Good. Yes. So, all right. So when you actually have your mashing tun, you don't have to clean it that often, not every time, because there's no sediment at the bottom. Exactly. That's soft water. Hard water is when you have a lot of like water cookers. Okay. Good. Yep.
It's relatively high pH. Also.
Right. Oh, okay. Good. So you have your fermentation tanks. You have 4 tanks. Is that right?
4 tanks, yeah. And
1,500 liters. Okay.
1,850.
All right. Yes. 1,850. Excuse me. What fits in your mash tun?
Sorry.
How much fits in the mash tun?
We can fit about 2,500 liters.
Okay. So you take.
We're mashing for 1 tank at a time.
Right. So you take what? How many kilos of grain of barley?
About 300 kilos.
300, and then you add about 1,500 of water.
Exactly.
Okay. Good.
We end up with about 5% distillers here after, you know.
That's not very much. All right.
It's not very much, but that's what we're getting.
Yes, you get what you get.
It is a balancing act, you know, of maintaining the viscosity and making sure everything is actually working with the equipment we have available, but still getting a good yield.
Can I be geeky and ask about the yeast?
The yeast, we use a mix of a distiller's yeast and an ale yeast.
Okay, very good.
So we have a little bit of a combination there. One of these tanks, fermentation tanks, that we split up between our 2 strip cells, which are called Maria and Jenny.
Okay.
And these are actually old refurbished dairy tanks.
Yeah.
So these are the Swedish dairy tanks that were every single farm in Iceland back in the last century. So most of the small farms in Iceland had maybe 8 to 12 cows. So this was the size of the dairy chewers they had on the farm. But today most of these farms have consolidated a bit, so they're too small for most normal farms today. But they were lying at our old family farm, unused. So we decided to give them new life in becoming a distilling unit.
How do you heat them?
We use electricity.
Okay.
So we have a heat transfer element in the bottom, which was used to be the chilling element.
Right.
So now we use it as a heating element.
Good.
So they're using interrotate via electricity for a very slow and consistent distillation of about 12 to 14 hours.
Oh wow, that is very slow.
Because they are they're chillers, so they're insulated. So they don't lose a lot of heat, and the amount of heat we put in is relatively low. So we get a very slow distillation, and because we do a grain-in distillation, we also during that time get get very consistent, good quality grain caramelization going. Which is carrying through in the final flavor.
Okay, Maillard effect. Excellent.
Of course.
And what happens to your draft? What happens to the rest of the product left over? Do you have take it to the farm as well?
We use it mostly for making fertilizer for farm and for growing and stuff like that.
Okay.
We are not actually working closely with any farmers at the moment, mostly because of just the logistics of transportation costs and stuff like that. So mostly it's used for just creating soil.
Good. So there's no copper in the first run of the stills.
No, sorry?
There's no copper in the first run of the stills.
A little bit.
A little bit. Where's the copper at? Oh, I see the hood there. Oh, yeah.
I have a small onion there.
A very small onion, both of these. All right.
So they do their thing. We also take a little bit of the oils.
Yeah.
And we collect them.
Okay.
They're actually used by a local artisan soap maker.
Can I show that over there? All right. Good. So that means here, this is what from the heads or the tails. Where would you get the oils from?
This is the low lines, basically.
The low lines, exactly. Okay, the heads.
Because we get so many oils from the barley.
Yeah.
We fold a little bit off it.
Okay.
So, to get the right flavor.
Good.
So after this long distillation, we have about 20% low line, which we collect in these tanks.
Yep.
It's full flavored, has everything we might need. Also, obviously, a lot of the things we don't want in the final flavor. So we transfer this one to our spirit still.
Do you do any cuts, any heads, any tails on the first run?
On the spirit run, no.
On spirit, okay, good. Okay, then here you do though. Tell us a little bit about the pot still. This is from Germany.
This is from Germany.
Yep.
Arnold Holstein. So it's a 300 liter one. It's a water bath, electric driven. And here we do the spirit runs.
Yeah.
So this is for our second distillation. But we also use this one for distilling our other distilled products. Okay. Which is a gin and an alcohol called Bourbon and Liste, respectively.
Okay.
So this is our spirit still. It's every now and then used as a botanical spirit still as well for our flavored spirits.
Good.
Here we do our patch. We do relatively deep patch.
Yeah.
We go quite low in the percentage because the flavors we're getting a lot of sweet, soft, and good flavors in the tail end of the hearts. Yep. And we get from each distillation cycle about 56 liters of spirit and 110 liters of heads and tails, which we then redistill with the next one.
Gotcha. Very, very good. All right. So there is no column. There's just your cooling tower there. That's very, very good because some, I don't know, Holstein likes to have a hybrid still if they can. If they can sell it to you, they will. So this has been used now for how many years? When did the distillery start?
We got this one actually in 2014.
Okay, 2014, 10 years now.
Yeah. So this one is getting a little bit old.
Yes.
It's showing a little bit.
Yep, okay.
It's got a little bit of patches and stuff like that. So, we are now looking at, retiring her for prosperity.
Yes, and a little bit bigger next time?
Probably, yeah.
Maybe double, at least?
Double at least.
Yes.
We're running this one 2 to 3 times per day.
Right, okay. How much do you produce here a year of whiskey?
About 100,000 bottles.
Okay, 100,000 bottles, that is then at 46%, basically.
Yeah.
All right, so that's 100,000 bottles, 50... Could we say about 50,000 liters? Would that be about right?
Yeah, that's relatively accurate.
All right, very, very good. So that's great.
That's at our current capacity.
Yep.
But we are in the next couple of years looking at increasing our capacity about 10x.
Right. Okay.
So we're looking at about 500,000 liters in probably 2 to 5 years.
Are you training future distillers as well, or will that be in the future then?
Sorry?
Are you training future distillers?
Well, for sure.
Okay.
We have.
So it's you plus what's your team? Sorry? What's your team of distillers?
So we have 3 main distillers here.
Right.
And we are, as a small company, we're a little bit all in everything. So we're on the floor and we're all in the logistics and in the packaging, and we're even doing tours as well. So the guy that was doing the tour earlier, he's actually one of our distillers.
Yes, okay.
So we find that, you know, it's interesting and important to know all the aspects of what you're actually doing. And yes, we train the distillers, and we are hoping Iceland will become a whiskey making nation.
Yes, well, you're doing your part for that as well. So very, very good. So where do you do the bottling?
The bottling is in the next room. So this building we're in right now, it's actually been our birthplace from the start. Yeah. Over in that production hall, we just started in one simple corner, doing our first experiment. We didn't even have a full floor space there. We had like half of it. The other one was storage. And slowly during the years we've been expanding and taking over a little bit of the space. Our guest room was our first expansion. It became our packaging hall at that time. Then we expanded over here, and this became sort of our logistics hall, where we have a little bit of our warehouse, offices, and labeling and bottling. So here you see our bottling setup. Yep. It's pretty semi-automatic, semi-manual work, because we are doing single barrel bottlings mostly. So it's only about 400 bottles each batch. So we have had no reason to scale up our bottling facilities at the moment. We hand label and sign each bottle here. Yes. And currently being bottled here is ENGLISCH, actually. Okay. Which is our rye whiskey. This is one of our newest products. Yes, I don't think I've had that one. All right. Give you a try. Yeah, thank you. Of course. All right, so one question I forgot to ask was about the warehousing. Where do you store your barrels? So most of our barrels are actually stored at a family farm. Yep. Which is in the south side of Iceland. Yep. About a 70-minute drive from Reykjavik City. Okay. There we have a lot of space for, you know, various types of longer maturation processes. How many barrels do you have at the moment? We are at about 500 barrels casks at the moment. Most are going to be ex-bourbon, I assume? Most are ex-bourbon. But you also have some? Yeah, but a lot of them casks we're actually using our own ex-young malt casks. Yeah, exactly. So our first whiskey product is Floki young malt, which is a younger variant of whiskey. It's about 2 to 3 years old, so more in line with many styles of bourbon in the US. And it's aged anew with American oak. So you get more woody notes, more caramel, more softness and sweetness and sugar from the casks itself. International Steve Company, Kelvin, where do you get your barrels from then, the new ones? We get it from many different suppliers. Okay, good. We've been using Space at Cooperage, and a couple of others. All right, very, very good. So we actually do the young malt first on the new casks. And then after we've bottled the young malt, we have a very good ex-young malt cask, which we then age or single malt for 3+ years. Let's take a look at your product range if possible here. You've already mentioned 2. So, to start with, single malt. This is our standard Floki single malt. Between 3 and 5 years, no age statement. And these are single barrel bottlings. So this is barrel number 68 here, and about 400 bottles each batch. We're bottling at 47%. It's not cask strength, but it's in a stronger range of it. It's not chill filtered, so we need the strength because we get quite a lot of oils from the Atlantic barley. Yes. Then I forgot to ask, when you take it off the stills, what percent are you? 62.5% or 63.5 in cask? What do you do? In the cask we have about 67. 67. All right, so a little bit higher than even. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, good, good. Yeah, we're not doing any cask trains. We're just doing still strength. Yes. Well, in America, the trend at the moment is more 55%. And so lower barrel entry proof is what's in at the moment. That's why I always ask about that as well. It does impact the trend for sure. Yeah. All right, continue please. You have the normal single malt? So we have the normal single malt, and then we have our smoked variant. It's this one. So this is smoked in a traditional Icelandic way.
Right.
And in Iceland, we don't traditionally use peat as a fuel source.
But rather...
what we have widely available is sheep dung.
Was that your idea at the beginning, or whose idea was that? I mean, that's...
it's a natural development.
Okay.
Because, you know, sheep dung has been used as a fuel source in Iceland for hundreds of years. And it sounds weird, but it's not actually that weird. It's just basically peat, just like 1,000 years younger. Because the sheep need to be kept inside during the winter, and it's like earthen wooden sheds. They do their business on the floor, get fed on the floor, and after the winter there's like a thick compact layer of dirt, soil, sheep dung, slight hint of urine, which they muck out to dry, and perfect source of heat.
Okay.
Well, now we have less smelly ways of heating, but it's still traditionally used for smoking, for example, lamb and fish. And we making Icelandic whiskey, it made sense to use traditional Icelandic way of smoking it, and it turns out actually to be quite good in terms of flavor and environmental impact and branding and marketing, of course.
Let's talk about your barley once again. You said it was mostly grown at your own farm. Where is the malting? Where does that happen, and where does the sheep dung in that process come into the picture?
So our barley processing is at our family farm.
Okay.
And where we do a partial malting. But mostly we're using unmalted grain in our distillation process. And so we're not doing the typical 100% malted barley as you would have in Scotland. We're more aligned with what they would do in Ireland. Oh,
like a single pot still then. Yes.
Exactly.
All right.
And because we're making Icelandic whiskey, you know, this being the first and only Icelandic whiskey, we were a little bit consciously making an effort of not trying to imitate any specific style, any specific whiskey. We didn't just want to make an average Scotch in Iceland. So we purposefully didn't call some expert from Scotland to tell us exactly how to use it. We tried our best in discovering what Icelandic whiskey is and what we can get from the Icelandic barley. And during that we borrow a little bit from many different styles of whiskey making in the world.
Great.
A little bit of Irish whiskey still, a little bit of Scotch, a little bit of Bourbon culture there. So we borrow a little bit of traditions from all over the world while still maintaining being 100% Icelandic whiskey.
Now in Germany we often use enzymes in our whiskey. In America almost always. Do you also use enzymes or not? Because it's also unmalted barley included.
We use it in our mashing process.
Okay.
We use enzymes. We find that it gives us better yield.
Of course. Yeah.
And you know, it's also a lot more environmentally friendly than using 100% malted barley in terms of energy usage and water and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you know, the word isn't very sexy, but this is what's being used in the industry all over the place.
We just don't talk about it much. And do you have floor maltings, or is it a drum malting? How do you malt the little bit that you do have?
We have many different ways.
Okay.
So we've been experimenting with technique. We've done a little bit of floor malting, a little bit of drum malting, but we are hoping to get a more, a bigger setup so we can do it more efficiently.
Yes, when you have the bigger pot still one day, you should have a bigger, more malting capacity is also needed, definitely. All right, good. Moving on, after we have our sheep dung.
So after the sheep dung, we have a couple of variants of what we call the double wood. So we have then 3 years on an ex-bourbon cask or ex-Floki young malt cask, and then a secondary maturation on selected wood. Yeah. So for example, this one called Floki birch finish, and here we use Icelandic birch.
Okay. Is it a cask or is it staves with birch?
We have little staves.
Okay. Yes, like Maker's Mark and so on.
Exactly. We have made one cask. It didn't hold a lot of water.
Birch is not very watertight.
It's not great for making casks.
No.
But you know, it's we are working on getting some more casks with birch. For example, hybrid cask with birch end.
Okay.
Talking to coopers about that.
Is there a cooperage on Iceland, or do you have to import the casks, everything?
There's like 3 cooperage left in Iceland. They're all like 93 years old.
Yeah.
The thing is, a cooper was a profession here in Iceland back in the days when we were doing a lot of salting of
herring. Yep.
So then you needed coopage. But that industry stopped a little bit when they started, freezing and more other processes of converting fish. Yep. So most of the coopers are now, in retirement.
Yes.
So we're trying to develop this technique with the newer generation. So first experiment was, the Icelandic birch cask. But we're still waiting for the oak forests to come up here. That takes about 100 years.
I was going to say, have you started planting trees?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Very, very good.
This is we're doing this for many generations, just a couple of years.
Yep. Great.
Otherwise, in the double wood range, we also have the beer barrel finish, where we have selected casks from Icelandic craft brewers.
Yeah.
Where they get our whiskey casks and do a secondary maturation for stout or porter or many different styles of beer. And then once they finished maturing the beer, we get the cask back and we do a secondary maturation with ex-beer cask.
Yep.
And lastly, we have a sherry cask finish.
Yes. All right.
All right.
So you mentioned beforehand, off camera, a little bit about your other products, gin, and explain very briefly your gin because it's actually whiskey based, isn't it?
It is. Dwarf, which means spring in Iceland. This is a pot distilled gin. It's made from the same double distilled whiskey base that we are maturing as our whiskey. So the same process as the first couple of distillations. And then we have maceration with Icelandic herbs and botanicals. And we selected only native herbs and botanicals that have been growing here at least 100 years. So this is sort of the style of gin that the apothecarian couldn't make here 100 years ago.
Cool.
Which was pretty much the only people that were distilling here back in the days. So it's more of a herbal type, more of a medicinal type. It's a little bit of mix between a contemporary gin and a vinegar type gin.
Okay.
Because it is pot distilled,
Yeah.
so we have a lot more flavor coming from the raw ingredients. So this would be a whiskey man's type.
Most people in Germany that I know that make gin, they just buy grain neutral spirit and then they make their gin with the botanicals and so on. You make their own base spirit for it and then the botanicals, and that's why I wanted to mention that. Anything else we can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, the traditional Icelandic spirit.
Yes, that's exactly. I've tried this, I think, about 5 years ago. Yeah. It was interestingly good. It was surprisingly good, yeah.
And this is, pretty much the same concept that you
yeah.
Take a herb and a botanical to make something roughly distilled, more palatable.
I think there was a juniper or not in there.
The main ingredients in aquavit, the Bourbon, is coriander.
Exactly, that's why I liked it. I don't like juniper.
Sorry, not coriander, cumin.
Okay, yes, yeah. Very, very good.
All right.
So, and product development, are there things in the pipeline? Anything we can get maybe in the next year or two, maybe our...
let me just...
Yep, then...
cumin would probably be misunderstood in many languages, so it's actually caraway.
Yes, that's right. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, something in the pipeline?
Anything in the pipeline? Are you going to be using crazy cask finishes? Mezcal, or I don't think I've seen a port cask yet here from you. Sherry, yes?
We always have something. Every now and then we do a single barrel bottling for some of our distributor friends around the world.
Are you in the States? What's
not in the States.
Okay.
We are sporadically available there.
Okay.
We'll get to make a full entry into that market. We're working on many things.
UK, Germany.
Germany, this is probably our biggest market.
Yes.
UK a little bit.
Okay, good.
And then we're in about 20 other.
All right. Any other English-speaking countries? Maybe Australia or Malta or
a little bit, yeah.
Ireland? Not
Ireland,
really. No. Okay, good.
Yeah, but a lot of the countries that Ireland and Scotland distributing their whiskies to.
Good.
They've created the markets.
Yes, they have. Very briefly, the history of the distillery. We haven't talked about that yet. Whose idea was it? When did it start? And when did you move into this facility? You mentioned the taking over more and more of the facility.
Yeah. So it is a family-founded distillery, and the idea is born between me and my father and my brothers. And you know, the romantic story of, you know, sitting on a family farm looking over the fields of barley and saying, you know, we should do something with this barley instead of just feeding it to some random source.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it starts as a crazy idea. And then, you know, my brother has made the first experimental bottle in his garage and his kitchen table, and invites us over and shows us the Excel spreadsheet where we're all making a lot of whiskey, and lets us try the whiskey, and it tastes pretty awful.
Okay.
But it was the first one, and you know, he had proof of concept that we could take Icelandic barley and turn it into something that, you know, could be imagined to be whiskey.
And that was when? 2000?
That was about 2009.
Okay, wow.
That's the first experiment.
15 years ago.
Yeah,
okay.
Time flies.
Time flies.
And then from there we just, you know, like any good ideas, we let the idea and process maturate. And we start doing more experiments, more trials, more tests, and see how we can work with the Icelandic barley. And then about 163 trials, tests, experiments, testings, and focus groups with our friends and families and other people. We end up with our basic recipe, which we've been using for Floki since. But from there, we've always had the concept that we want to make a little bit better whiskey tomorrow than we did yesterday. And I think we've developed from that, and we are constantly working on making Icelandic whiskey a little bit better every day.
Excellent. How difficult was it to get permission for the distillery?
Well, you know, relatively simple.
Okay.
In Iceland, you know, there is obviously to run a production, you need permission and you need licenses and stuff like that. But
you are the first and still the only Icelandic whiskey distillery.
At the moment, yes. There are some people that are, you know, working on developing recipes and trials and tests. So we will hopefully see them develop some products and release it in the future, because we want Iceland to become a whiskey making nation. And we're certainly not the only and the last whiskey distillery in Iceland. But when we started out, you know, in terms of licenses and registrations and stuff like that, it's quite a lot simpler than, you know, many different countries in the world.
Yep.
Because, you know, for example, in Scotland, you know, they've been playing a cat and mouse between, you know, the distiller and the lawmaker and taxmaker for many decades. So there's all sorts of jargon and legal stuff that's been added on that. Here in Iceland, because we don't have a long tradition of distilling, we don't have as much of much stuff in terms of the legal hurdles and frameworks. Just make sure you're making things right and doing things right, and, you know, pay the taxman, and then you're good.
Now in Germany, per liter alcohol, we have to pay excise tax of 13 euros and 3 cents. What is it in Iceland?
Per liter of alcohol?
For a liter alcohol.
Pure alcohol?
Pure.
Oh, wow, it's probably like 10 times more in Iceland.
Okay, 40 something is Ireland. Scotland is in the 28, I think, or something like that. So I didn't look. I can look, and so I thought you might have known that. Yes. Yeah,
I mean, I know the per centiliter of alcohol. So per centiliter of pure alcohol, it's about, it was about 300 Icelandic kroner. It's like 3 euros.
Okay, so 30. Yes.
So yeah, about 30, 40 euros. You know,
so you're almost at the. So Ireland is still higher. Yeah, really, unbelievable. Now your other things are higher with VAT and so on, but yeah, that's very good. Where can we find you online?
www.flokiwhisky.is.
Okay, and tours offered here. I, for example, I'm flying from Europe to Iceland. I'm here for 2 nights, 3 days, flying on to America. People are doing exactly the opposite as well. We can come visit you when? Yeah,
so our distillery store is open on most weekdays from 10 to 3:30. You can find the opening hours online on Google Maps.
Yep.
Tours we do most days by appointment, so please check our schedule online on flokiwhisky.is and book a tour if you want to come visit us and do a tasting and see everything. The tour comes with a tasting of pretty much all of our products, so it's quite generous and highly well reviewed.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for allowing me to film here and to show the world a little bit more about Floki.
Yeah, thank you for coming. It's nice having you here.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.